Welcome to Tech Startup Stories, hosted by Natalie Binns. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the B2B startup world.
Hi, I'm Natalie Binns, and after many years as a marketing leader in the B2B SaaS industry, I set up Hey Gabby to support startups and scale-ups with their go-to-market and growth needs. I work with so many great founders, and that's led me to want to hear their stories and share them with others. And that's why I set up this podcast. So let's get into this week's podcast. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's podcast. This week I am speaking with Mike Hauptman. He is the founder of AdLib. Hi Mike, thank you so much for being on the show.
Natalie, hi, thanks so much for having me.
So what's really interesting with your story so far, Mike, is that you've been running the business for quite a while. So some might say that you're more of a scale up these days rather than a startup. Is that how you describe yourselves?
It can be. We haven't really been using names, I guess, in terms of size of people at the company. It still feels quite startup-y. We've been doing this for a while, and slow, intentional growth has been our objective.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the company? What do you guys do at AdLib?
We built a platform for programmatic marketers and advertisers to make their world easier and make their campaigns perform better. In practice, that means that we've helped to consolidate what's an incredibly fragmented world of tools and dashboards that today media traders, anybody who's involved in programmatic media, is wrangling because they're using multiple demand-side platforms. They're using multiple dashboards for reporting. None of these systems are speaking to each other well, and there's a fragmented experience for the user who has a million tabs open and is spending a lot of time just context switching, and there's a fragmented experience for the consumer who's not getting a consistent message that's sequenced appropriately because none of these systems are really speaking well to each other. So with AdLib, it's a layer on top of all of these tools that normalizes inputs, normalizes outputs, allows systems to speak to each other, and ultimately allow the end users to have a better experience, whether that's the consumer seeing a more relevant message that's helpful for where they are in that journey, or the agency buyer who has one tab open and they're spending less time on data wrangling and tedium and more time on strategy and making sure that clients have the support and the human interaction that they need to get as much success as they can out of the platform.
And so you're selling into agencies and then B2B sort of marketing functions, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's definitely those two. So independent agencies who for too long have been relegated to second-class tools and being forced to use tools that are available and accessible and behind lower barriers to entry, but ultimately leave a lot to be desired in terms of inventory quality, performance, transparency, and control. And what we provide is that alternative to the agencies, these independent agencies who are in growth mode and ready to break out of that world, and they're looking up market at the enterprise tools, but those are behind red ropes and they're very difficult to access and difficult to use. So we're providing an alternative now, which provides all the same access and tools and efficiencies that's usually reserved for the enterprise marketers in an easy to access, easy to use package. And that's not only for independent agencies, it's also for, as you mentioned, brands that are direct to consumer brands or other emerging brands that are looking to scale beyond Facebook and social and TikTok and search. And they're looking at this world of programmatic, knowing there's a ton of opportunity, but that it's really hard and it's expensive and it's difficult to make it do what you want it to do. B2B marketers as well, who are looking to expand beyond LinkedIn and use all of their data powering account-based marketing across not only traditional touch points like email, but extending that to programmatic screens, display ads, connected TV, streaming audio. All of these worlds, all of these consumer touch points are now addressable and can leverage all the same targeting and granular targeting controls as you've been able to reach through some of the more traditional channels.
So you've been doing this for sort of 12 years now. You would hope that things have improved in that time. What have been the big things that you've noticed in the shift in your world in that time?
So there's been some things that have helped, but there have been also some things that have created some challenges. I think this is a problem that's getting more exacerbated, and there's a need for a piece of technology to eliminate the fragmentation and defragment this world. When we started out 12 years ago, we were going after a very different opportunity. We had an idea of a consumer product where basically wouldn't it be amazing if you could extend your social messages and your social content to reach your friends with that same content wherever they are across the internet. So having social media posts pop up on my website that I'm reading, or in TV streaming, can have those videos show up. And we thought that was a novel idea, and it explored that space for a few years before pivoting and kind of shifting to providing an easy to use programmatic tool. And then what we saw along the way was all this fragmentation continuing to kind of explode. And what I mean by that is you have this world now where the media owners also control buying platforms, and they've created these walled gardens around their media properties such that in order to buy it or access it, really the best way to buy it is through their platforms directly. And specific examples being Google. If you want to buy YouTube inventory or YouTube TV inventory, you have to buy it through their platform. And then of course, Google is a major player in the supply side space and powering all the publishers and their ability to monetize their properties. So they have a really efficient path and connection to all of those supply sources. So then you have Amazon. And if you want to buy Amazon sponsored placements on their site, or if you want to buy Amazon Prime or Amazon Twitch, streaming content, that has to be purchased through their platform. Then we look over at some other efficiencies that exist as far as Yahoo having their own demand side platform, and they own a lot of media properties. So what clients and what we saw agencies were doing was they were building their own stack, and creative agencies were trying to become technology platforms and build their own meta DSP or build their own layer on top of it to make it all work together. And everybody was building their own, and they would try to develop software team inside of an agency world, and it just didn't work. So we saw that as an opportunity to come in and say, how can we create the system that is the default system for these agencies and brands and marketers who need access to all the really premium inventory, all the stuff that's behind these gates, make it more accessible, make it all work together, and allow people to spend less time just navigating, again, between 10 different tabs and bring it all to one. And because of the continued fragmentation, the value proposition is getting stronger. And we're finding more interest and more demand and the need to consolidate workflows, automate tedium, and allow systems that are historically living in silos to work better together and speak together.
So when you were sort of coming up with this idea, you were working in a very senior role in a media company by the looks of it on LinkedIn. So how did you balance the time, and what was it that really kind of got you to kind of go, do you know what? I've had this idea. I'm just going to start building something whilst working crazy hours, holding down the senior role.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a tinkerer, and I don't know, in the back of my mind, I always kind of wanted to start a business and had a lot of ideas that I thought were interesting ideas and maybe had value for consumers, but never was able to connect the dots on something that was commercially viable and could be a business. So one of those fun ideas just kind of popped into my mind one day when we were working, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could target friends with ads? And I was working at this platform that made it possible, and I just did it. I didn't build it, but I did a thing where I used a little bit.ly link, and I said, hey friends, you check out this video, and they clicked on it, and little did they know, when they clicked on that link, it put them in a retargeting pool. And later that day, when they were browsing their website, they saw my face and a message, and they screenshot it and messaged over to me. They're like, what the F? And and it got exactly the reaction I was hoping for. And I was like, isn't this cool? I'm doing a thing here. And they're like, did you just use media math to do it? I said, yeah. And they said, this is genius. So I had a buddy that I was close with there that was a technical mind. And I said, let's give this a go. Should we try to do it? And I don't know, naively or maybe naively, I was 20, as my late 20s, just walked in. I had a good relationship with the CEO. It's one of the first 100 employees. And we literally just walked over to his office at that point in time and knocked on his door and said, I think we have an idea. Can we try something? And can we do something? He said, sounds like an interesting idea. Let's do more than that. Put together a presentation for us to review it. Put together some of the unit economics. Tell us about your vision and how it's going to scale. Maybe we'll put a little seed funding in behind it. And we did that. And they did. And it was a tiny bit of money. Looking back at it, it was $30,000. It was back in 2014. It was everything to us. We couldn't believe it. And we started doing some, we incorporated. We built bylaws and we did the things that you needed to do to just have a company that you have to do. It's not glamorous, it costs money. And then we started building, and we built a prototype iPhone app that actually worked, and it was cool. And you could take pictures and put a little, just like an Instagram, change the mood, put the captions on them, and select which of your friends you wanted to see that thing across the internet. And then we were didn't have much of that money left, and we were trying to figure out how much are people actually going to pay for this thing. And this is all while I'm moonlighting and have a full-time job, and I'm doing it in nights and weekends, and I'm using a paperclip method, which is I put 20 paper clips in a pile, and I find someone in the that I think might think this is interesting, and I send them a LinkedIn message. I do that every day. I do that every day for weeks, and by the time I'm done, I've reached out to hundreds or thousands of people, and you start getting responses. And I followed that thread to an evolution of the product, which was influencers. This new thing, influencers may want to amplify their message, and you may actually be able to get brand dollars to amplify influencer social media content across the open web. And we did a little bit of that, and we found some fits and spurt. We found some opportunity there, but it was too early, and we were trying to sell something new. Then we had to convince people that there was value here. So then we evolved to, well, what if we just had a really easy to use programmatic platform? We've kind of built that, and we took this to agencies and said, all the enterprise stuff, none of the hassle, and that started to sell. And we started to finally have some consistent business, and this was 4 years after the fact. It was incubating for 4 years, moonlighting, and was building had enough revenue going where both the company who I'd been working at and incubating, and I agreed that it was probably time to move on and give this thing a go. And we did. And Dan, our CTO, stayed on and was moonlighting for 4 more years from there before he was able to join the business. And within that, we started to grow. We were 3 people. So now we're at 2023, 9 years later, 3 people finally kind of making our way. Haven't raised a dollar since. And the company that Dan and I both left and incubated at, and all of our technology was built on, went bankrupt overnight.
Oh, gosh.
And I had a 2-year-old at home and another one on the way in a couple of months. This was over the July 4th weekend. It was Friday of July 4th. We got a message saying in 12 hours, your account will be paused. So that led to the next evolution and change in trajectory and growth, because we were able to stick around and we were able to figure it out, and we owned our destiny, and we didn't overcapitalize and we didn't overhire, and we did it on our own terms, and we were able to evolve from there into where we are now, which is a 24-person company just 2 years later, connected to 20 of the industry's top demand side platforms from just one, with a value proposition that is being incredibly well received by the market beyond from where we were, which was an easy to use tool. We're creating immense value for a range of organizations and still haven't raised a penny, and give that all, and I think there's a lot to that. And there's a lot of glamour that I think is associated with venture capital and a desire to raise a lot of money, but then you have to put the money to work hard in ways that may not be aligned with your beliefs and your value system and where you want the company to go. And you don't own that destiny anymore, and your runway is suddenly finite, and every decision has to filter through layers, and you may not be the ultimate person who gets to make that call. So long way of saying it was hard. we didn't do it the traditional route. I wouldn't do it any other way. And there were massive bumps and catastrophic challenges along the way that were necessary for us to achieve the growth that we have. And we wouldn't have gotten there if we hadn't had those challenges.
It's often said that one of the things that you experience as a founder is those highs and lows and significant lows. And if you find it too easy, the question is, do you have that resilience for when times do get tough? But it sounds like you've already been through many challenges. What did you personally do to kind of keep your head in the game and keep going, rather than kind of go, do you know what, let me just go and get another job. This is too hard.
I felt harder and just it never crossed my mind. I knew that we could solve it. I'm too stubborn. I have a lot of belief in the team and in the company. And I'd invested too much time and energy and already promised myself that I was never going to go get a real job again. If I had to and everything totally fell apart, of course, we weren't there yet. I talked to my wife, and of course, like that was probably a big key part of it, right? So she came home. I was working from home at this point, and I told her what happened, and she's like, "I'm sure you'll figure it out." I was okay. I guess I will. And my son was there, and I looked at him, and I was like, okay, I guess I got to figure this out. And I went for a walk, called some friends, called some people. We got campaigns migrated over that same day, and we didn't have a $0 day. So we had to work through July 4th weekend. It was hard. We lost a big client. That's still one of our biggest clients to date. We've grown a lot beyond that and have a much more compelling, much stickier product now that is more resilient also, and a team that's more resilient. So it sucked, but it was the best thing that ever happened to the business.
Absolutely. So you built the team to sort of 24. What were the first hires that you guys went for, and why did you pick those particular roles when you were kind of adding to your team of 3?
So it was me and Dan. I was doing operations, every single thing that wasn't building the product, and bandwidth is a constraint, and time was a constraint. And Dan was still working at Media Math, so he had to put in his hours, and he could only put in so many hours on the nights and the weekends on the product. So we hired an engineer that could be our full-time engineer building under Dan's guidance, and we hired an operations resource to help actually keep the lights on and move things around and help respond to clients while I was selling and getting the business off the ground, and still very much involved in the operations, but needed an additional set of hands. From there, we started scaling out basically when there was too much work for one person to do, and it became clear that there was a line of delineation or some kind of specialization that should be carved out, because they're really doing 3 jobs, and what we need the most of is this one thing, and allow them to do 2 jobs, but give this one job to this one person. We've been kind of building that way the whole time. So now a lot of my we just hired a marketing resource because 30 to 40% of my day is now wrangling various marketing initiatives. Now I'm the only person that oversees marketing. So that's too much time, too much of my day, and I'm not the best. I'm no longer really fit for the role. I think there are people out there that do a better job of it and can be held accountable, and we can kind of afford it now. It's not a firm, this is exactly the roles that we are going to hire over the next year, because everything's changing constantly. The only thing that we really planned for is change.
Absolutely. It sounds like you've been through quite a time and a lot of hustling along the way. What have been the kind of best routes for you in terms of going to market?
You have to put yourself out there, and you have to be where your prospects are. For us, that's been Reddit, LinkedIn, G2, just having a voice and a presence there. Being active in communities within your niche or vertical is also incredibly powerful. And sponsoring communities helps you raise more awareness. So with ad tech, there's various Slack groups that you can join, and I'm not shy about sponsoring those types of forums, and newsletters and other podcasts that are relevant to the industry that I think are undervalued, or have incredible reach. We're able to move quickly. We're able to make decisions quickly and test things, and that allows us to get into these newer spaces before anybody could even run it by their marketing department for approval. And there's a lot of kind of like second order and third order benefits of being in Reddit and G2 as it comes to SEO. I don't want to give away all my tips here, but if you're Googling something specific to your industry, there's going to be, or if you're in ChatGPT now, there's a relevant Reddit conversation about that topic. And because Reddit is Reddit, those posts will surface and be very highly ranked in the search results. So you really need to be everywhere, and you need to be engaged, and there are compounding results and benefits from those efforts.
And how do you think your product has evolved in the time that you've been kind of pushing that out to market? Because a lot has changed in the 12 years you've been active. A lot of the buyers' behaviors have changed, and how platforms and media platforms have been used has kind of evolved over that time.
Yeah, I mean, well, the story and the platform have gone through several evolutions. I'd say for the last 3 years, we've really been squarely focused on solving this fragmentation challenge. And, in the last 6 months or a year, AI is everything. People want AI everywhere. So maybe that's an interesting thread to pull at, in that we believe, a ton of value and efficiency and performance to be extracted from AI. Internally, we've been building tools and processes that are saving us time, saving us money, and allowing us to surface opportunities with our clients based on signals that would have gone undetected in the past. So we're trying to figure out how to surface some of those same benefits to our clients within our platform to give them more time back, but also allow them to identify ways to get better results for their clients. So, it's fairly recent, but putting a lot of effort into that AI foundation and making sure that whatever we build, and we've got a lot of ideas around media planning, forecasting, interfacing with the platform, insights, testing, whatever we're going to do is going to be very well thought out, secure, and sound. And we're not going to be building spaghetti code that is maybe an idea that is interesting but doesn't really add any value to the end user just because it's a trend. So I'm seeing a lot of that happening right now, and I guess our approach is going to be a little bit different in that we're really figuring out ways to have it help on the back end and be a co-pilot and an extra set of arms and a trader and an always-on research assistant. And I think that chat-based interface is not the end game, which is maybe where some people are going with. It's interesting, it's limiting. Everybody's going to want to go into a system when you're dealing with enterprise grade tools and audit and look. And if they're going to be held accountable, they're going to want to look through and have visualizations and signals just like a cockpit does, and not a chunk of text that probably hallucinated. So I think there's just so much there to unpack, so much opportunity, but also a lot of noise happening right now in the space that we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we.
That totally makes sense. Being reactive to what is essential to your customers rather than what is the kind of noise and the latest thing. So let's talk about your journey as a founder in a positive light. What has surprised you most in this journey so far?
I think I'm in a better place mentally than I ever have been, as far as satisfaction, and not the job satisfaction, but just where I'm at. And it's been way harder, but it's not impossible, and it's not as hard as you think. I know those are kind of contradicting statements, but there's a lot of support out there. There's, even today, the barrier to entry and the barrier to start building a business is so low. Do you have to have something that people value and will pay for? Yes. I think that's something I've learned over the years. You can't just have a good idea. You have to have a good business idea. And once you have a good idea, once you have a sound business plan, you can rally people and you can get people to believe in it and behind you. There's so much support out there And I've been amazed at how helpful people have been along the way, in my community, in my network, other communities that I've tapped into, where everybody's dealing with the same problems and everybody has the same things, and nothing you're dealing with is new to this world. Somebody has dealt with it in the past and they may have some helpful answers. So, you're never alone. You have to be open sometimes about and open to yourself about the challenges that you have along the way. You may have to go to therapy along the way. Like these are things that you really deal with. It can be lonely, but it's also there's such dichotomy. It's really, and at the same time, I'm surprised I lasted this long. Like, I'm surprised I was actually able to figure something out.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think your journey is something that so many people will resonate with and have experienced very similar things that you have. What are your kind of plans for the next 12 months for the business? What are your hopes and aspirations for the next 12 months?
We're going to continue growing, and we have a ton of momentum at this point, and we're going to continue reinvesting in bringing on board the best people, in reinvesting in the best tools for our clients, and continuing to punch above our weight. So we're really excited, now that we're standing ground and winning head-to-heads against companies that are well-funded, well-staffed, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, 2,000 person organizations, and we now have a right to win. So I'm really excited to see us continue to expand our market share in this space.
Great. Well, I hope that you'll come back next year and share with us how you've got on in the last 12 months, which will be. And I'd love to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Natalie. We're going to get there one way or another. Who knows what the story will be in 12 months, but we're going to get there.
I'm sure you will. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Natalie, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this episode of Tech Startup Stories. Have a story you'd like us to share or a topic you'd want to cover? Reach out and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.